Welcome to the IEPPV Image Review. This is our first one for 2019. I've got my good friend Stephen Scharf from the TWIP Pro community here. He is going to be helping us give a critique. We've got 24 images to go through today. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we think this image could be improved to go into competition. So we're going to nitpick a little bit. We're going to look at, grain structure, composition, impact, technical skill that it took to create that image, all these things that are needed for image competition, and give some pointers and hopefully help the participants that have submitted these images to either choose images to go into competition or maybe refine them before. Our competition will be coming up in about 2 weeks. So we're getting down to the line. And this year, for the first time, we're going to be doing our image competitions digitally, online. So for those of you that are going to be watching that, hopefully by the time you see this, you'll look back and go, hey, it went pretty good. We hope. We hope, but you never know. So what we're going to get started here, Stephen, is I'm going to bring up the first image for you. So for those of you that are in the panel, or just your participants, feel free to put questions in the Q&A as we go through. If it's your image, you're welcome to let us know. That's fine. I'm not going to be watching a lot of the Zoom chat. That's really for you guys to kind of chat amongst yourself. So if you have a question, put it in Q&A. Please don't put chats and conversations in the Q&A because it really just kind of confuses us a little bit. And whether I get to your question right away or sometime during, I'll make sure that we answer all those questions. So, all right, I got 27 different panels open here. Let's get to my share. Let's grab capture one. All right, now this is our first image. So Stephen, sometimes the images have titles, and those titles can play a big part in how the judges may perceive that title, because if it says, black and white waterscape, well, that's not super enthusiastic. But not unlike this one, it's bone beanie. See, I can't even pronounce it. So I'm going to suggest to the maker that titles that the judges can pronounce or the announcer can pronounce is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Also, some of these are in different categories. So depending on the category that it's in, the rules would apply differently. So I'm assuming this is going to be landscape. So I'm going to have you go ahead and you start with this image right here, Stephen.
Okay, so it looks like we've got kind of a cityscape photograph here. Looks like, I don't know where the setting is, so it's a little hard for me to tell if it's someplace in the United States or in Europe or somewhere. What I'm noticing is right now, from a technical execution perspective, there seems to be some lighting along the right edge of some of the buildings off to the right, which are darker than the buildings on the left half of the image. I'm not sure why that is. It may just be the lighting that was kind of on those buildings at the time, but it looks like there's been some sort of post-processing work done that's resulted in something that looks like a halo or a shadow around the building, which I find a little bit distracting. Troy, you often talk about in our critiques on TWIP Pro about the subject kind of being 50-50 in the frame. I see that there's a little bit of that here. So from a composition perspective, I would say that you could probably lose maybe about a half to a third of the water in the foreground, because for me, that's not of a whole lot of interest. Yeah, something like that, exactly. And probably come down maybe a little from the sky, the top of the sky as well, just to balance things. This particular photograph to me looks like something of a cityscape panorama. So I kind of like a wider aspect ratio. I think for me, cinematically, in a way, I'm very cinematically driven. That works for me a little bit. But I'd like to maybe see some Troy, you comment on this a fair bit in some of our other critiques. I'd like to see some burning of the image on that right side to see if you can bring up some of the detail of what's over there. Because the fact that it's in silhouette in a way kind of draws my eye to it. but I don't know I can't really tell what it is. So there's a little bit of a question left in my mind about it. And then the other thing I'm not sure, and Troy, maybe you can weigh in on this as well, is it looks like technically in terms of the camera positioning, I don't know if it's an optical illusion or not, but it looks like that the horizon is very slightly tilted upwards on the left and downwards on the right, just a little bit. And that's not perfectly straight. And it also looks like there may be, I can't really tell because I don't see the image that big, but yeah, thank you. I couldn't tell if it was keystoning on the building on the far edge or that the horizon. That looks better to me. So that looks a bit more balanced.
It's all even, it looks like they're shooting and the shoreline is moving away from them. So what that's going to do is that's going to create that illusion of tilt.
Right.
Even though the horizon may not. So the judges are still going to look at that. So make sure that your horizon is straight so that your vertical lines are vertical. And watch out for those halos above the building. If they're not halos, if it's just light pollution, still burn those down because they think that is actually haloing.
Yeah, that's the first thing that caught my eye was the haloing. And that distracted me away from kind of the cool buildings on the left, which look more interesting to me architecturally because I can see more texture and detail on them. But I would try to maybe balance out the luminosity on the left side versus the right side, because right now I see kind of a mismatch a little bit. I can see detail and structure and texture on the buildings on the left side, which is cool. Those buildings, as an architectural photographer, those look really interesting to me. And then there's stuff on the right side that's dark that I can't really see. So if there's some way to balance the luminance from both halves of the image, for me, that would balance the image a bit more for me in terms of the presentation of the subject, which I think is the cityscape in this setting along this river or coastline or something like that.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Yeah, because that, let me reset this crop real quick. There we go.
What are your thoughts, Troy?
No, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, the nice thing about having an image like this is the graphic nature, the black and white nature.
Yes.
But we need to be careful that, we can see all the details. And it looks to me like the biggest thing is the dodging and burning that's been going on, like in the skyline, right above the buildings. We'll make sure we don't have any of those halos, because anytime a judge can see that you've done Photoshop work, or even if it looks like Photoshop work, they're going to pick on you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I can't, the issue is I can't tell if it's just halos from work done in post, or if it was really lighting that's behind that part of the city for real.
Right.
My mind doesn't know which is which with this.
All right, we are going to move on to our next image, and this is called Broken. So this is a landscape image. And so for me, I really love this image. The leading lines, the texture, the pattern of the foreground. What I'm not sure about is the crop. I feel like we're not getting enough of the cracked, the broken path. So what I did was I just did a quick little crop, and I don't know if that's better for everybody, but to me that's a much stronger image. And then I burned down the edges of the ground around the outside, just to kind of bring that path so it stands out a little bit more. I really love this image. I think this image could do really well in image competition. Either way, either crop. I do like this presentation, so I would play with the crop a little bit. Stephen, what do you think?
I'm exactly in agreement with you on that, and I think both ways work, and I think it's up to the photographer to decide, which conveys what they saw and felt and resonated with at the time. It looks like it was taken, I'm not sure how it was taken or how it was photographed. It almost looks like it was taken at night. And you've got this kind of beautiful cracked texture to the ground, to the land here, which kind of recapitulates in some way. The cracks kind of look like rivers moving through Africa. And then there's that kind of dark area on the right that kind of recapitulates that and leads your eye through the frame really nicely, as does the edge of the coastline. I'm thinking Tribe maybe might prefer your crop, since that's what catches my eye. And in my own mind, even though I like both images, with the hills and the sky in the background, I'm a little undecided. Should my focus be there the beautiful foreground is leading me there, or is the emphasis on just these wonderful textures and the way that it's lit up when you had it cropped more tightly? But I do like the image very much. I like the presentation. I love the leading lines. I think that the black and white conversion and the control over the luminosity of the image, the range of brightness, the tonal values is really, really good. So I find it very interesting to look at.
Cool. This is actually my favorite crop. Now I was playing with it a little bit on the side. Showing a little bit of the mountain, I think, is nice as opposed to that much of the sky. You know,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the sky's not really adding a lot, so maybe do that. Really cool shot. I know who made this, and I'm very jealous because I love this kind of stuff. This is great.
I think having the hills at the background kind of set a place so you can kind of determine that, to me, this looks like it might be somewhere up near where you live, Death Valley area or something like that, somewhere where there's some desert and mountains and hills. So I do like this crop, I think, the best. And then, for me, it's all these interesting shapes. I love the light on the cracked earth here and the way that it's lit up and the way it just leads your eye through the frame. So I think, this crop, I think, works the best for me. But it's a very nice photograph.
All right. We're going to jump to our next one. This one is called Collision. Now, just to give you a little heads up, is that infrared? I don't think it's, it's not infrared. Annette asked if this image is infrared. I know who shot this, and he doesn't have an infrared camera. So,
Rebecca asked about, what do you think about the darker patch in the middle? I think she's maybe talking about, there's a little area in the center of the cracked earth there.
Yeah,
it's a little bit darker. I hadn't noticed it before until you brought it up, but now I see it, and I think you could probably. This is a very, Troy, you should weigh in this. This is a great example of where maybe a little luminosity mask could pull that up and have the luminosity of that darker patch match the surrounding cracked earth by doing an inverted luminosity mask with Lemenzia, or if you're in Capture One, you could do it easily enough, or even with a brush, you could pull it up just a little, like Troy's doing. He's kind of burning it in a little bit just to even out the luminosity there and make sure that the eye doesn't get distracted. But once Rebecca pointed it out to me, then my eye went right there. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, any of those things that sort of distract you should be cleaned up. So good catch. Good catch. All right, so we're moving on to the next image. So just to give you a heads up, Steven, so when we do our competitions, the judges don't see the next image until we announce the name. And that's part of that title, that impact, and why the title can sometimes matter.
Right.
This next image is probably, I'm going to say it's the illustrative category, so it's open, and it's called Collision.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I'll let you go ahead and start with this, and then I'll wrap up.
I think this is really a great example of the illustrative genre or discipline. It's, I think, a really nicely done, time lapse in a way, or instantaneous photography. I think my one thing I might want to do is, take out the specular on the stream coming up. There's another little specular.
I'm not doing a very good job.
There you go. That one there. And then maybe the one at the bottom there a little bit, just so that the eye's not drawn to those. I might just want to brighten the blue just a touch, maybe 10% or so overall. And then make sure.
It looks like the blue is a little bit overexposed, like in the stream, some detail in there and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but overall, I think it's a very interesting illustrative image. I love the droplet coming up. This is a very common thing that occurs when you capture droplets like this in terms of the physics, because what's really determining this shape is the surface tension of the liquid. It looks like some sort of paint or viscous liquid, and you can see these beads, coming off. This is all due to the physics that's going on here, which is really cool. I think what I would do is present this with a white key line around the frame, just to kind of set it off from because at the top it goes to black. I can't really see where the top of the frame is. So maybe a nice white key line around the actual image with a black mat, I think would set it off really nicely. And then I would call it good.
Yeah, this is really nice. I did notice that I'll see if I can zoom in. See just below the main drop, there's like a little shadow, or there's a small drop in there.
Oh yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah,
and I would suggest that we clean that up. Anything that you can clean up. So for me, everything Steven said makes perfect sense. I would get rid of the highlights mostly, and I don't think I would take them out completely, but I would definitely take them down a lot, so it's not this pure white spot. Because one of the things that it needs dimension, and right now the stem of the splash has no dimension. It's flat because there's no reflection on it.
Right.
So that's lighting. Now this is lit flat. This is flat lit, so it's lit from the camera's perspective, probably a strobe or something. You've got to light these things just like you would anything to show shape. Backlight and stuff. So,
or light coming off at an oblique angle or something like that to give it a little bit more three-dimensionality and shape, because then you'll start to get a little bit of a shadow or something curving around and showing that stem is actually, circular in cross-section or round in cross-section.
Yes. And then Rebecca, you were asking what I was using. I'm in Capture One, and I'm using a healing layer to just paint that in there. All right. So the next image is Digital Artistry, and it's titled A Pinwheel. And I'll go ahead and start with this one. So in Digital Artistry, we normally want to see the image that the artist started with, because part of the way Digital Artistry is judged is not just only the image itself, but also the skill and technique and creativity that it took to build the image. That's also very, very important. So what I would say right away is I like the premise. I really like the idea of what's going on here. I'll be honest. I don't think that the way it's presented at this moment that this image would merit. And the reason is not because of the concept, but because I can see all of your artwork on the outside edge of the actual pinwheel. So you've got this lighter area around the flower tips, if you will, and then where you've clipped it and put it on the background, now I see basically the black. And it's not consistent, it's uneven. So what I would do is make sure that whatever's in the frame of the actual image you're presenting is all the same tone all the way out to the very edge. And just make sure that has that continuity. I can also see that there is some little elements left over from when you did the cloning. So you got to go through and really, really just be super nitpicky and go in there and make sure that you can find all those. Hang on, I lost my crop tool. Yeah, go in there and find all of those little pieces, because I can see those.
Yeah, I can see those as well. I would say to the photographer, I think it's a very creative image conceptually. I love in a way that this has almost like I don't know what the term I want to use, but there's it's almost like a living fractal kind of shape, which I find really interesting. With your comments, Tori, about cleaning up the cloning, I don't know if the photographer has a Wacom tablet, but this is an area where using a Wacom tablet and giving you the control and precision over cleaning up the editing in terms of the cloning tools that are used really helps quite a bit to give you the precision and control you need.
Yeah. And I really like this image, and I think that it's a neat juxtaposition between having a piece of a flower make what to me looks like another flower, right? So you've got the outside petals, the stamen, the center. And so I might suggest a different title for this instead of Digital Artistry and just calling it Pinwheel Lily. You might be a little more clever, flower within a flower or something like that, because it is a flower. It's not a pinwheel. To me, it looks like a flower. But either way, whatever the artist prefers. So go ahead and make some of those adjustments, and I think that this one could definitely get a merit. So the next image has no category, but it's called Fire and Ice.
Oh, I know exactly where this is at Mona Lake.
Yeah, everybody does.
I photographed exactly from this perspective before. So
yeah. And this looks like I was there during this because there was a fire going on.
Yeah,
and it completely destroyed my full moonrise. but it made for some really cool reflections and things like that. So, Stephen, I'll let you go ahead and start with this one.
So I think it's a beautiful location. It's a beautiful time of day. So kudos to the photographer for showing up at where we're, if this is evening or I imagine this is evening because this part of California, the sun sets in the west, the light's coming over from the left side. So my guess is the light spilling over the Eastern Sierra and lighting up the tufa here. One of the things that I like to do, I think the smooth, wet, sandy beach part of the texture there. But one of the things I pay particularly attention to when you've got this interesting coast or the rougher part of the sand at the edge of the water is I like to make sure that what I call my cut line is clean rather than broken. I don't know if you can crop out a little bit and just create that lighter edge that's at the right hand corner further back down to the rock so that maybe it just continues right to the very edge of that rock in the lower left. I would crop down from the sky a little bit, maybe.
Hang on, let me throw a crop in here, and then you just tell me. So yes. Crop down. I'll crop down from the top a little bit.
Yeah, that right about there is good. Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't know if the bottom of the photograph has been cropped or not, but when I'm thinking about, like that's better for me, so that there's the cut line. You don't know what I mean by the cut line is where the edge of that textured part of the beach or the shore and then the smooth part intersect. There's a clear kind of Ming thing, and I call them kind of a cut line. So I like that better. I don't know. I'm wondering if the rock on the lower left really adds anything to the photograph. I think it pulls my eye away a little bit from the image. Troy, I don't know what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah, but I was looking at that. The problem is when you remove it.
Yeah, you remove a lot of the interesting light coming in. Actually, kind of that works a little bit better for me.
Yeah, that does work really good right there. Actually.
Yeah, I would probably use that, and then that fixes the issue around the cut line for me. I know that you don't want to lose that beautiful gradation of tones of this. Pardon me, of the sunset. But I think the way you just cropped it, I think, is probably the most effective. That works too.
So this is how we all edit our images. We sit down and we sit and play. I'm going to burn down that stone, that rock in the lower left hand corner. Let's just burn that down. Yeah. See, I think if you leave it in there, it's fine. If you crop it a little bit tighter, I think is fine, and then just burn it down a little bit. One of the other things that I did is I put a gradient on the sky. So anytime that the sky is bright at the top, it leads our eyes out of the image, and you really want us to focus on that horizon. So I put a linear gradient in there, and I'll make it extreme. Am I on the right layer? Oh, here we go. Yeah. So,
it helps to push your eye down towards the tufa, right?
I'm on the wrong layer, of course. Yeah, there we go. So by bringing that down, brings in there. Yep. And see what I can do is I can even.
That looks really good. That directs the eye down. Now it has an almost otherworldly look to it, right? Like this could be some planet around Saturn, where life could possibly exist. It's so otherworldly that way.
Yeah. So there's our before.
Yeah.
And then there's our after.
Yeah. That's really nice.
So we got that's such a cool spot too. And it was really hard to shoot that day because the smoke was coming in and it kind of just messed with my head, like what my expectations were.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun. It was fun to shoot there. So, all right, we're going to move along to the next one is illustrative. And it is titled, Troy, does juxtaposition apply to your camera and anvil in the background? Yes, of course it does. I had the camera sitting on the anvil, but I was afraid it might fall off. So I didn't want that to happen. Yeah. I like things that shouldn't be together, like spicy Jello. I like that. I like,
Of course.
yeah. I know. All right. So this one is called, it's illustrative, and it's called, I'm assuming it's 38 Beauty. So I'm assuming that's a 1938. Oh, it is. Yeah, I can see the license plate.
It looks like a 1938 DeSoto or something. I don't know what the make of the car is, but it's a very interesting car.
I'll let you go ahead and take the first.
Yeah, so I actually like this quite a bit. I think that the photographer's done a very good job. It's difficult in these situations to isolate the subject, because the car is so interesting. To separate it a little bit from the background, there's an old panel or a pickup truck off to camera right that I think the photographer's done a good job of kind of bringing that down so it doesn't lead your eye over to the truck per se. There is a structure. It looks like some sort of building or something, or a fence in the background there, that I would burn down a little bit off. Yeah, Troy's doing a Luma mask here.
Can you see what I'm doing? Okay.
Oh yeah, it's cool.
I was going to try to be I was going to try to be clever and not let you see what I was doing, but I
know exactly what you're doing.
It's going to show anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. That's even better. So now this is really, I love the shot. I actually go to these types of car shows myself and make photographs. There's a couple here in the Bay Area that have stuff like this. I was just at the Black Hawk Museum a couple of weeks ago. You may remember. So I put up some photographs there a couple of weeks ago, just snapshots basically. But I love the photograph. I particularly like the position of the camera for this. The low position with the kind of three-quarter view front and the emphasis on the flags with the right front fender, and then the grille and the headlights kind of give the car a sense of majesty. So in a way, it's a hero shot, right, of this beautiful car in terms of so I think the camera positioning is excellent. The height of the camera is excellent. The three-quarter position of the front shows the car really, really nicely. I think all this needs is a nice key line, maybe a light gray or dark gray key line around the image on a black background to set it off.
Do you not see the key line?
Oh, I do. Okay, yeah. Okay.
I was just making sure I was showing.
Yeah. So that actually, that looks really nice. I think it works. Again, I think it works in this kind of subdued color tone. Of course, I would always, and Troy would probably do the same thing, I'd always try this in black and white just to see what it looks like. But it looks gorgeous in black and white too.
Oh, it does, yeah.
And I would decide which kind of filter I might apply to the black and white, whether green, yellow, or red, to see which of those colors would pop in the most interesting way. That's probably a green filter, I guess. That last one.
No, that's red.
That's red. Okay.
Yeah, there's some red in that yellow, especially the car is yellow. So I can make the car really bright. Ooh, that is
exactly.
So cool.
Yeah. I think they're both really cool. I guess, it's nice to have them both. I would probably stay with the car in color. I like the subdued tones and the color grading. I might give it just a touch of clarity to bring up the acutance or the micro contrast just a little bit. The color looks just very slightly flat to me. And I think if you could just do maybe 8 points of clarity on it or something like that, or maybe a very, very subtle curve move just to make it pop ever so slightly, it would, and you could call it good. But it's really a lovely photograph.
I agree. I'm going to show you what I did. So this image is sort of what I would consider my post, and this is the before. So everything that Steven said makes perfect sense to me. Now, it looks like some dodging and burning has been done on the ground underneath the fender and around the front car's front right tire. I can see those halos. So one of the things about burning, and we see this all the time, is that when you burn, you have to make sure that you burn naturally right up to the subject without the subject getting darker.
That's right.
Don't miss any of those cracks or holes. or gaps. So basically what I did is this is just like a heavier vignette that would go around the outside to bring down.
Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, and that just makes the car pop out.
Even. It does. It makes the car look even more dimensional.
Right. And then for competition, this is really get in here and clean up the ground, get out all those leaves, get out all those little specks, get out that twig, take that blue line out of the front left corner of the car. Right. Those are not things that add to the image. And in competition, we only want to leave in things that are going to add to the image. So by removing those, you're really cleaning up the image. Even in the back, there's a building.
Yes.
There's a light.
Yep.
Right above the roof of the car. Just like clean that kind of stuff up even.
Yeah, and there's something next to the left headlight. There's a white spot. It looks like a little thing coming off on camera right. The left headlight, there's a bright white spot that must be from the truck or something like that. That's coming
like
off.
the tire. Yeah, it's like the white wall on the tire.
I don't know if that's the white wall on the tire, but there's right near the headlight lamp itself, there's a bright white spot that I don't know what that's from, but it's near the fender of the pickup truck. But yeah, I would go through and clean up those details.
Yep.
Again, this is a place where a Wacom tablet really facilitates kind of doing this kind of editing.
Exactly. All right, we're moving right along. Illustrative. This is called Geological Phenomenon.
Oh, this is nice.
Yeah, this is very, very cool. I'll go ahead and start with this one, and then we'll have you wrap up on it. I love the black and white featuring of this because it's so graphical, right? We have all these graphical elements, these lines. I don't know if it's just the way that it's coming through to me, but I actually have the file, so it looks a little bit flat. Like it could really use some clarity or structure in there. See, like that, to really help separate those highlights out. And it's hard because this is red, and red always overexposes. So anytime you photograph anything red, especially like in slot canyons or anything, underexposed, even if the camera says it's not, even if the histogram says it's probably not, red overexposes. It's just our cameras are sensitive to red. So just always pull it down at least a half a stop or so. But other than that, I don't have any problem with it. Other than I don't like the double key line.
Yeah.
So the key lines are really not designed, but their intention is to help the viewer separate where the image and the matting, if you will, the framing stops. And when you add another key line, basically you're telling me that second key line is where the image stops. So the first one is part of the image, which you can see the conflict graphically within the image. So stick to one key line and try to keep it really, really simple. Stephen, what do you think?
I don't have anything to add. I'm thinking it might be nice, maybe, I don't know, I would maybe do a version where I might bring up a little of the shadow detail in the lower left, just a little bit, so that it doesn't fall off into kind of empty darkness there. That looks nice too, Troy. I like that. Yeah, that looks, again, and then you might want to increase the contrast in the bright sections a little, make sure things don't blow out. There's a sharper edge right at the kind of upper middle part that could start to get really bright. You would want to make sure that doesn't get overly bright as you bring, it looks like Troy just applied a curve there to kind of bring up the contrast a little, or the levels maybe, Troy, in Capture One.
I just brought up the shadows and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that helps a little bit to see a little of the shadow detail there. And then that little area where it's kind of cut, that's kind of bright, it's almost white, I would bring down by just doing some burning with a brush, just so that it matches the range of tonality. It's really a lovely photograph. I love the texture. I love the shape. It has a very organic shape to it. I think it's beautifully seen, and just a very nice image. And I agree that I would just go with one key line for it.
Cool. All right, we're gonna speed this up just a little bit because we're 40 minutes in and just about halfway done. So, so this one is illustrative and it's called High Jumper, and I'll go ahead and start on this one. I don't know if I did on the last one or not, but this is all fair, right? So right away, I love the composition. I think that's, great timing. It's a little hot. It's a little bright. I feel we could bring that exposure down just a smidge to increase some of that pop in there and that saturation. Probably just the black point because there's almost no black.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I'm going a little too far because I have the JPEG.
Yeah, it looks like a cyclocross racer to me.
Yeah, probably. I'm going to bring up a linear gradient in the bottom because I think the ground is a little bit too bright in there as well. So it's all about creating, tone so we can see the rider. And then just there's a contrail in the top left-hand corner. Yeah, you gotta want to pull that. You gotta want to pull that out of there.
Yep.
So now I'm curious to the maker why you would put this in illustrative and not put it in photojournalism. Did you push pixels or did you clone something out? Because this could go photojournalism. You could do all that dodging and burning. You'd have to leave the contrail, but I think it would do much better in photojournalism. And the reason being is in illustrative, I know that you have unlimited control in that category. You can do anything you want to this image. So I'm going to be super picky as a judge. But if it's a photojournalistic image, I'm going to say, well, okay, you couldn't get him above the plants or the trees in the background. You couldn't take out the contrail. So something to think about. So Stephen, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I think to me, it reads more as a photojournalism image. I would probably crop just a skosh off the bottom, and then a little down from the top and a little in from the right to give it more of it looks like it's a 4:3 crop right now. I'd go maybe more of a 16:9, and I'd position the rider a little. Yeah, exactly, Troy. Yeah, more like that. Mm-hmm. And to me, since I do a lot of motorsports photography, as Troy knows, positioning the rider in a slightly wider aspect ratio gives room for the bicycle to move through that space and convey some dynamism and motion that you can see where he's going to end up on the jump, right? He's jumped over the hill on a cyclocross bike, and he needs space to move into. And I think a more rectangular 16:9 aspect ratio would lend a better sense of dynamics to this. But I do see this more as a photojournalistic style image than illustrative, personally. Right. And you are allowed to crop in photojournalism.
Yeah, you can crop and you can dodge and burn pretty heavily, actually. Yeah. Just no pixel pushing. You just can't. Use the pixels.
That's right.
All right, we're going to jump into our next one, which is illustrative and is called peer pressure. And I will go ahead and start with this one. So I'm assuming this is our same human that entered the other one with the double key line. Again, we're not going to hound on that too much, but the double key line is more distracting. It draws you away from your image, and that's not what you ever want. So I really like the look of this. I don't know.
I do too.
Yeah, I'm just going to crop it so those key lines aren't in there.
Right.
There we go. And I feel like that's really, really strong.
Yes.
Vertical lines are good at the end of the pier, and probably at the beginning, they're struggling because that's just that angle. I like the shadows of the people on the pier. The crop is great. I think this image, just the way it sits right now, you're a mid to a low 80s. I don't think you're going to get super high, but I think you're going to definitely merit.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd like to maybe see if it's possible on the far left, since it's falling off more into shadow, if it's possible to bring up just a little shadow detail. I think the crop is fine. Troy's just playing around with the crop to see if it balances a bit better. I would like to see maybe just a hint more shadow detail in the blacks underneath the building there, just a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little blocked up.
Yeah, it's a little blocked up. Yeah, I like what you're doing there. I think helps a little bit because then you can start to see the shape of that interesting structure, that lattice work structure that's supporting both the pier and the building.
Right.
That helps to kind of lead your eye, from the building out to the edge of the pier and then into the very calm water. So, yeah, it's a really cool photo.
Right. It also looks like we have, I don't know what this is. Oops, I just messed up my whole crop. There we go. Right down here, there's something that's popping up. I don't know. I can't make that.
Oh, yeah.
I can't make it bigger on the screen.
Yeah, I wouldn't have noticed that until you had pointed it out, but it's good that you caught it. That
Yeah,
again,
so
you could use. Yeah, you could use the patch tool in Photoshop or something similar in Affinity to kind of just, do context-aware fill on that and pull that out and even out. I think it's, Troy, your idea is to even out the tone in that part of the water there.
Yeah, well, there's a right in. I got to try.
Yeah.
Right in this area right here where the red is, there is a weird, like a little, I don't know, could have been a hair on the sensor or whatever. And then in this area right in here, where I'm painting red right now, I'll take the red out in a second. That area, it looks like there may have been some cloning done in the water, and it doesn't look natural. It may just be because of the long exposure, but just be careful. The judges may see that as, some not clean cloning. So clean that up. All right, our next image is illustrative again, and it is peer view. I don't know where that peer is. Stephen, why don't you go ahead and start with this one, and then I'll wrap it up.
So I like this one quite a bit as well. I really like the framing, in particular, coming in from left and then going down along out towards the ocean. The one thing that distracts me a little bit is I would crop up very slightly from the bottom to maybe just under that bright spot at the lower left. On there's a stanchion for the pier, and then there's a reflection in the water there. And I might just crop right under that a little bit because there's some bright reflections at the very bottom of the frame that are leading my eye away from looking down the pier. Yeah, exactly. So I'd come up a little bit, Troy, just a little more, right there, maybe down a little bit. Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. And then I'd make sure, I don't know if maybe it's just me, if there's a little bit of barrel distortion on the horizon, I can't really tell. I'd snap a guide in there, make sure that the horizon is perfectly flat. Where the water line is.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I just checked it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's fine. Sometimes your eyes get fooled by the shape of the subject in the photograph. It makes things look like they may not be straight, or there may be a little bit of distortion in them. But if everything looks good, then I'm fine with that. Overall, I like the photograph a lot. I like the range of lighting. You could probably burn the lights down a little bit that are along the pier, just a skosh, maybe a third of a stop or so, and maybe bring up at the far end. This is again where some masking would help. Just a little bit more detail in the shadow and add just a touch of structure to that, so that it doesn't look too blocked up. But other than that, I think it's really strong.
Yeah, all those points are very good. Now, one thing I am noticing is there are several dust spots on this image.
Yes, there are.
Here, there's a big one here.
Exactly. I'm seeing those too. There's one straight above it, I think.
There's one here. There's one here.
Yeah.
There's one right here.
Yeah.
There's one here. So yeah, there's one there. So what you've got to do is you've got to crawl this image little by little by little, and you've got to just go through and you've got to get rid of those. Now, be very careful when you remove those, because like this, like the one that you have right here, okay, it looks like you tried to remove it, but you didn't do it well, because I can see the halo edge around it.
Right.
So this is going to require Photoshop. This is going to require using a smart healing brush, painting, making sure that the gradations are done properly. So otherwise, you'll have a lot of telltale signs that you cloned in the sky.
Yeah, just to add to what Troy says, I've been watching a lot of professional retouching videos. There's a really good company that puts out a series that Troy knows called RGG EDU. And when the pros do their retouching, they do exactly what Troy says. They zoom in on the image and they go right across the frame, up all the way across, up and down, and they just look very, very carefully. They scrub through and look for the smallest little things that they need to retouch out, very, very thoroughly.
Yep. And if you're not sure, and I can't really show you here, but if you're not sure whether you can actually see the dust spots or not, is literally grab the image and move it around. Yeah. And your eye will see that little thing move and be like, oh, there it is.
Exactly.
So, okay. And then Annette had a question. Would you crop a little tighter? Okay. I think we talked about that one on this image. Yeah, we did crop that. So that one was answered. And then what would you think about the title? Was it Peer Pressure? And I don't think the title, and I think I'm sorry, I'm going back. You're referring to this image. I don't think that the term peer pressure makes any sense. I don't know why where the pressure comes from. Like a soft, I don't know. I'm terrible at titles. Go look at jazz songs, jazz titles for songs. Yeah. That's the best. That's the best way to find, song titles. So,
yeah.
We're going to jump ahead. We're going to go right into, this one is landscape and it's called Emerald Bay. And I will start with this guy. Right away, the first thing that I notice are the clouds.
Yep.
Because they're the hottest thing in the image.
Yep.
So this image really needs to come down. And I'm hoping that there is some detail in those clouds, if within that raw file. But just very basically, I'll try to bring down the overall image. Try to bring the highlights up a little bit to create some contrast. So that's really what I think is missing in this image is the dark shadows and the contrast. It's a pretty cool image. The horizon is right in the middle, so we've got really two stories going on here. We have this beautiful skyline, and then we have the water below that with all the boats that are in there. And this feels a little infrared-esque, just because of the dark water and the white boats. So I'm not sure what else we could do with this image to get it a whole lot farther. I feel there's a lot of distractions going on just in the composition. Stephen, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. For me, the number one thing is I would be definitely using a luminosity mask to pull the luminance of the clouds down, because they really take my eye away from Emerald Bay. I've been to Emerald Bay many times. It's a very beautiful place. And of course, my eye would normally want to focus on the water and what's going on in the little center island there, where there's a mansion that was built by a wealthy woman at some point. I might crop down from the top of the sky just a little bit. And again, this is my own kind of preferences. I tend to like things a little bit more cinematic looking in terms of the aspect ratio. I'm really undecided on the tree in the lower left in terms of the foreground. It does distract me a little bit. I don't know if you could do anything about it. If you'd want to try to, I don't know that trying to attempt to clone that out would be successful with the smooth water in the background. That might be a very difficult retouching job. So I might leave it as it is. I probably would have, from the photographer's perspective, I would have moved camera right a little bit and tried to get this from a perspective where you've got, that looks better to me also. Where that tree isn't so predominant in the foreground, because that's what's pulling my eye also a little bit away from Emerald Bay, is that that tree in the foreground.
Right. And something else to think about when we're taking photographs is how is this perspective different than what anybody else would have taken when they stood there? Right. So if this is a common location, and I've never been there, but if this is a common location, what could you have done differently? How could you have gotten this shot differently? Could you have zoomed in on just the island? Could you have, you could have really cropped in, got some just of the mountains. I mean, you could have shot, hopefully, if you had the lenses with you. But, if you moved in and you got something of this nature, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. It's hard to say. And I know that the challenge for Emerald Bay is there's only certain places you can stand and take photographs, right? There's turnouts from the
Right.
road that circles around Lake Tahoe, and you only have a limited number of vantage points to take photographs from of Emerald Bay and the various kind of, scenic places that you can stop around Lake Tahoe. So there may be a limitation there. But it always helps to just, think about, and because it's digital, right, and the images are free, is to just change positions. And then also, just to expand on Troy's point, probably 90% of photographs are taken with the camera like 4.5 to 5 feet off the ground, or 4.5 feet off the ground, which is kind of like an eye level perspective or slightly below eye level. And sometimes it's just interesting to try lowering the camera a bit and see what that does, or raising the camera, but just try different perspectives and see if they add any dynamism to the photograph. Like the photograph of the 1938 car was really cool because it was a low perspective. It can't give it a heroic kind of quality.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. So we're only halfway through. So
Oh wow. Okay.
we got to keep moving.
Yep.
So okay, landscape, slide rock in sepia. Why don't you go ahead and start with this one, Stephen?
Yeah. So I like the landscape quite a bit. It's an interesting locale. Right off the top, I think it's cropped too tightly on the top, so my eye wants to have a little space above at that point at the upper third. Maybe there's a point that sticks up a little bit. I'd like to have a little more sky above that, and maybe a little bit less of the foreground. I'd crop up a little bit. It looks like there might be some water. There's some water or a stream, and I might come up or burn down certainly that very bright area along the edge of the stream there, so that it doesn't lead my eye away. It looks like that there's been a fair bit of processing here where things are blowing out to just pure white, and I'm losing the tonality. So
Right.
I like the sepia, the sepia idea, particularly for rocks like this. It kind of gives it an old 1800s look, but things are blowing out to pure white, and that I find distracting.
Right, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And we have a couple other issues with this image that we've got people in the shot on lower left-hand corner, and those are the kind of things that if you're going to shoot where people are, sometimes you just have to wait. So I don't think that they add to this image. I think they're actually a distraction. And then the other thing is I'm going to bet that there's something wrong with this lens that you're shooting with, because the top left corner is significantly softer than anywhere else in the image. And way top left, you can see that the mountains and the rocks are way out.
Yeah.
So, and that's hard. In landscape, we need to have that thing sharp all the way through. So nice presentation. I think you got a good idea here, but those elements where it's a little bit too soft and stuff, there's really nothing we can do with that. So, all right, the next one is landscape, and this is called Texas Pool of Pleasure. Not sure where the pleasure part comes in, but interesting title. Double key line again. Same comment with that. I do love this image though.
Yeah.
The colors and the shapes and everything that's going on in there is really, really nice. I might work to create a little bit more depth to the shadows a little bit, really push those shadows down. Not so much that they block up, but what it will do is it'll make the water itself pop out.
Yeah.
So I love this. I would get rid of the second key line, maybe bring the primary key line down just a tad, and I would submit it just like this. I would personally, if I saw this presented and everything, I would probably give this an 85. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's a very nice use of negative space too, in a way, with the water.
Right. And something to take note is that when an image is simple, there's not a lot that can distract you or make you feel there's something wrong in the image. So simplicity is really important. The less distractions you can remove, be a cropping or just how you build your subject, can make a big difference. So this one's really solid. This one's really nice.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, I'm going to jump to the next one. This is called It's in Nature, and it's called Flamboyant. Would you like to start with this one, Stephen?
Yeah, sure. I guess I struggle a little bit with this image because I'm not sure where to focus my eye. It looks busy to me. There's a bright area also that's I find distracting. It needs to be burned down, or it's almost blowing out again to pure white. I don't know if it's recoverable in the raw file. The leaf at the lower right and the lower third is also blowing out, and then there's a branch or something that's running through. I don't know if it's possible to clone that out or crop it out or whatever, but I find it distracting from the scene. This looks like some sort of like mimosa style fern or something. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But I guess for me personally, I'm struggling to understand what the subject of this photograph is.
Right. Anytime, and it's not fair to compare images, but just for the sake of education, notice how simple this image is. We know there's a story, there's leading lines. It's simple. We know what to look at. Our brains are happy. We can look at this all day. This image, it's busy. There's multiple subjects. There's multiple things in focus. There's multiple points. So take that into consideration when you're photographing your subject. Ideally, I'm thinking you're looking at the flowers. That's great. But how do you get the flower to isolate itself? And that's the challenge. That can be really hard to do. So this image is something that is a great concept, but I would definitely go back and reshoot and try to focus. And so any viewer knows exactly what you're telling in the story without having to really think about it.
Yeah.
All right. So our next one is Nature, and this one is called Python. Now, to be clear, in the image competition rules, in order to be nature, it cannot be photographed in a zoo or a pet. So unless you found this in Nature, unless we change that, I'm going to have to look. We better make sure, we better double check that, because if I recall that in Nature, it had to be actually in the wild, so no domesticated animals or zoo. But that aside, we just want to double check. That aside, this is quite wonderful.
It is. It really is. It's beautifully lit. I love the position of the snake on the driftwood. I think the driftwood supports in a nice way and balances the shape of the snake in a very supportive but not distracting manner. I think that crop is even better. So now we can see, that reptilian eye and tongue. Yeah, exactly. And then what I would do is I'd go in and fix those speculars. They look like water droplets. They're just blowing out to white. It's cool that the snake has got water droplets on it, but I'd probably, the ones that are blowing out to pure white, I would either see if you can either pull back some luminance detail there or just clone them out entirely. I think there's enough water droplets on the snake to add interest. So I think if you just remove the ones that are blowing out to white, that it will still be fine. There's a little white speck near kind of the snake's where his ear would be, or his tympanum, that I'd probably, just fix as well.
Right. No, I love this. And I know this, there's already been some dodging and burning going on in here. So I appreciate the attention to that. I would say that the snake itself is a little bit hot. So I would bring down, the mid body area. And then the crop, I think this is a stronger crop.
Yeah, I agree.
And I've burned down the lower right-hand corner with a gradient. The snake has white spots. No, really.
Oh, okay. That's fine. All right, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's hard to tell. Now, see, no, this is something that's important to understand, though, is if a judge doesn't know that,
right, then
they're going to judge it accordingly. So it may be fair that the snake has white spots, but if they don't come across that way, then we have to decide, like, if I'm not a snake expert and I don't know that those are supposed to have white spots, I'm just going to think that they're water highlights.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, because remember, competition isn't always reality.
So. Yeah. I wouldn't have known that the snake had white spots. in its scales there, unless Annette had mentioned it, because they do look like specular water droplets that are just blowing out. So I think Troy's comments there are worth consideration. It's a really beautiful photograph.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's really, really, really cool. All right, we're going to move on. This is Nature, and it is called Tundra Blooms. I'll go ahead and jump in on this one right away. Beautiful color, really, really nice. The impact is fantastic when it comes around. Even the title's really nice. The key line is cute. You're going to find some judges, they're not going to be happy with those colors.
Right.
But for the most part, it does a really good job, and I really like it. It's unfortunate that there isn't something in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Because that negative space just is begging for something to be in it. So I don't know if you have other shots where you could do some additional dodging and burning, but I will tell you that this image would never merit the way that it's presented. And that is because I can see your Photoshop work. See the lines? Looks like you tried to bring in some another image to maybe vignette that a little bit. I see the vertical line. Here, let me grab the mask. Right. Oh, I got to turn the mask on. Right here. And right here. I can see those clone marks. This is another one of those things where you really just need to look at this thing at 100%, turn those layers on and off, on and off, on and off. That way none of that happens. There's another one here. There may be more that I can't see. So, you're going to go through the time of making this beautiful image, creating all this. And then if a judge sees that, it's your time is not wasted, but you know what I mean? So be very careful of checking those. Other than that, I think you have a great image.
I would agree. I don't have anything to add.
Perfect. We're going to go along to photojournalism, and it's called Sliding into First. Boy, this is right up your alley, isn't it, Stephen?
It is, yeah, or maybe Mike Doran's alley as well.
Yeah, but Yeah,
that's fine. I think this is cool. This is Speedway, very clearly. I know from the bike and the rider's position in his boot. This is Speedway racing. The one thing, again, I would simply add here is I'd crop in from the left a bit just to give a sense of dynamics through the frame, so that the rider, fortunately there's enough space on the right for the rider to move through the frame, but he's a little smack in the center right now, and so I'd crop in on the left a little bit, maybe just to maybe halfway between the edge now and the rear tire, like that, and that would help just to kind of balance, I think, a little bit more the sense of movement through the frame. I can't think of it. It is, Troy's probably going to say it's pretty bright in the background. You might see if you can burn down the background a little bit, but I've been in these situations, and it is what it is. It is bright out there. People race in bright sunlight, so it's going to be bright. I think what Troy's doing with the radial gradient tool is nice, because it's going to put a little emphasis on the rider's helmet. And yeah, that looks great like that. Boom, that pops. That's starting to show some editing, but you've got the idea that Troy is just testing out there. And I think that actually adding that little bit of contrast, I think Troy helped the bike look a little bit better too, because the bike, the black leather is a little bit blacker, or the contrast. So that I think is nice. And I just fix up the brighter area around the helmet there at the edges, so that it's not so clear that it's had a radio gradient applied. But you get the idea from what Troy's doing.
Yeah. And again, when you bring in your image in camera, and I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to say that most the images that you see, the images that are the great images, the images that are in the magazines, the images that you see in publications and everywhere, they've all been massaged. So, take the time to get in there and massage that image to make it its best. Because what you see in your eye, what your camera sees, isn't always the best, and it isn't always real, right? So those letters are black. Bring them down, because in here, here we go. In this image,
they're gray.
Yeah, they're gray. And then clean up that background.
Yeah.
I mean, little things like I'm not exactly sure what this is, but I'm gonna think that it might not be bad to clean up whatever that is right there.
Yeah.
Spend some time and perfect that image. And it's also good practice.
Yeah, I understand kind of why it was framed this way, because this was probably shot with a DSLR, and you've got a couple points in the center, and you put it smack on the middle of the frame, the viewfinder with the autofocus points. But what that tends to do is put your subject right in the middle of the frame, and it looks a little static that way. So I'll always crop in on the left, close to the rear tire, and then leave, as Troy's pointed out, some space for him to ride through on the right, and that will give a sense of dynamism and kineticism to the photograph.
Yep. Great shot though. Good. I mean, it's sharp. I mean, we should say that you're showing just enough motion in those tires.
Yeah.
There's enough action. Everything else is fantastic. So we got to make sure we don't forget that. I mean, it's sharp. It's the composition.
The body language is great. The dirt kicking off the rear tire as he's drifting through the corner is great. The position of the boot and everything, his body language, it's all. Yeah. This to me says racing. So it's very. Yeah.
Can I guess? Is this Karen's? Karen, is this yours? Do you wanna tell us if this is yours or not? Karen Ott. This is the kind of stuff she may do. Whose image is this? I'm just curious. Maybe they'll tell us. Okay. The next image, My First Christmas, portrait category. Oh, this is actually really cute, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of looking around. The red key line is really a struggle for me. I see what you're doing there. It's going to be hard. There's also some gray coming into the red, and I'm not quite sure why that would be. So
it almost looks like it's posterizing or something. I don't know what's going on there, but
and yes, that previous image was Karen. So yay!
Hi, Karen.
Karen. Stephen Scharf, you and I talked. You guys need to talk. He wants to talk to you about your Micro Four Thirds and why you can keep it and still be happy. So
Karen and I are Facebook friends, so we can.
Good.
We can chat offline. So
good. So what I would do, and like I do with any of my portraits, is I always try to put a vignette in there to kind of bring in focus on the face. So see, I'll bring down the outside just a little bit. But we're getting some kind of weird metamerism or thing going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Tough.
Yeah, there's something that is causing the levels, if you've got 8-bit color, whatever, something is stretching the color levels apart, and we're getting some sort of banding or posterization or metamerism.
Right.
That is just making the image look kind of flat and muddy a little bit, I think, in certain areas.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image. The composition is nice. What I would say is go back to the editing and see if you can get that better edit out of the software, right? Because the judges are going to have a hard time with this, and I'm afraid that it's deserving of a merit because it's beautiful, but I think you're going to have a hard time getting that from the judges because of the clipping red and the key line. So go back and play with that a little bit. We're going to jump ahead into senior class of 2019. So this is going to be in the either senior category or the portrait category. Either one, the assumption is that you have complete control over your subject. So, Stephen, why don't you go ahead and start with this one?
Okay, I feel like this is you're better to start.
Well, I
I'll take
threw
a
you
crack
in
at
there.
it. Okay, that's fine. I guess for me, I'd like to maybe see the model's head a little bit more on a third, intersection of a third a little bit rather than smack in the middle, just to add some interest. And then, yeah, that works better for me. Yeah, bringing it in closer. I don't know. I don't have a lot to add. I don't have a lot of experience posing the model. I think that she's making great eye contact with the photographer. She's got, a very nice smile. She looks pretty natural posed. Troy, I don't know how you feel about the position of her hands in the photograph. And I know that you've spoken at times on TWIP Pro about how to tell your subjects where to place their hands and arms. So maybe you can jump in at this point.
Right. No, you did good. You did good. I threw you in there on purpose. I know the motorcycles here, but I always like to hear everybody's comments. So the beautiful model, beautiful subject. I mean, exposure's tight. You've got, your lighting is really, really nice. So you did a great job there. I would suggest, if you're going to do a lot of these, that you do a hair light in the back and then let your background fall darker. The background's a little too bright, especially for studio. It's competing. The brightness levels between the background and her face are too close. We need more separation. Aside from that, her pose is nice, but it seems very rigid. Notice how her shoulders are almost perfectly flat. And all you really need to do in this case is just have her shift her weight to one leg or the other and let her hip pop. And then she'll settle into that pose. This is kind of like standing at attention. It's beautiful. The client's going to love it. It's even potentially a low merit in competition because it's very well done. But I'm just being nitpicky to help you take it a step further. The other thing is I can tell you did a lot of work on the eyes, and you've got to really be careful there because a lot of judges are starting to catch on to that, and they're not as forgiving on the super modified eyes anymore. And so in the white of her eyes, I can tell that that's been painted up, and nobody really has eyes that white. And not only that, when you do that around the iris, it tends to feel unnatural. So you need to make sure that, like on her camera left, on her eye, it's bright all the way right into the corner. And that's not natural. Naturally, because the eye is around, it falls off. So I'm just going to say, do whatever you did, but just bring it down a tad. And then just a nitpick on the portrait a little bit is bring the highlights down on her lips just a little bit.
Yeah. And there's a little highlight on her left cheek as well that could be brought down a little bit
just
as well.
Just a tad. Yeah. Not
just a touch. Yeah, just a touch. Yeah.
Top of
and then the one thing I don't know about, and Troy, you could speak to this, but it looks like that when you pull, it looks like that the skin tone on her face, maybe she's more tan, because she's athletic or something, is slightly different than her hands. I don't know what's responsible for that mismatch. I'm picking up a little bit of a hint of more yellow in the color of her face than her hands, which look a little more magenta to me. I don't know why that is, but I do notice a little bit of a color discontinuity between her lovely face and her hands there, and I don't know why that might be, but I do see a difference there.
Now, when I pulled all the color out of that blue, notice how much more she stands out.
Yeah.
So that blue being that bright and that vibrant can really be distracting.
Yes.
So I can even pull that down a little bit.
Yeah.
Saturation.
Oh, that looks nice.
Yeah. And this is a little rough because I'm just doing it with a color selection tool, but now you can see that separation that we're talking about.
Exactly. And she's more, she's more dimensional and lifelike looking this way, right? Because the background isn't predominating against the lighting on your model.
Yep, exactly. And keep in mind, some of you may look at this and go, okay, well, that's great. I don't shoot portraits. The same rules apply whether it's a motorcycle on a track or
absolutely
it's a mountain. I mean, light's light. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, absolutely right.
Yep. So let's go ahead and jump to the next one. This one is called Smoke.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, this is very cool.
This looks like stuff you would do, Troy.
It is. It's a lot of
yeah.
like the stuff that I do. Yeah. Yeah, I dig it. I can tell you, smoke is tough. And the hardest thing about smoke, and the first thing that I notice with this image, is it doesn't feel like it's sharp. It doesn't feel like it's in focus. And that can be really tough. And maybe it's not fair for me to say that, because I really try hard to get the smoke super, super sharp. And it's not easy to do, and sometimes it's not even possible. So stepping back from that, I think this is a merit-worthy abstract image. I love it. I would just watch those highlights that you've got going on. Yeah, definitely try to bring those highlights into control, because I think they're they're gonna nail you for that.
I agree.
That one,
and
that one, this one down here.
And the one to the left, there's an edge there, just up.
Yeah.
In there. Yeah.
Yeah. They're clipping to. It looks like they're clipping to white.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's all I would add to that, is just bring those highlights under control.
Yeah. Beautiful image, though.
It is. It really is.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Wedding, Bellagio. Would it be fair to have you start with this, Steve?
I guess I'm struggling here a little bit with this image in terms of seeing the couple, because the water fountain behind them is so bright that in a way it looks like it's putting their faces a little bit, relatively speaking, into shadow. And I can't see it big enough on screen, but the skin tones look a little muddy to me with the lighting. So, and then of course the tower in the background's a bit of a distraction too. So, clearly I'm supposed to focus on the couple, but then the Eiffel Tower in the background, I think, leads your eye away from them. So, I'm struggling to know. It's clear that the subjects are the couple, but from a judging perspective, you've got 2 or maybe even 3 subjects in this photograph, and so my eye is bouncing around between the very broad fountain, the Eiffel Tower, and the couple, and then the light under the railing there that they're standing next to, I think is too hot. But for me, the couple is just too dark relative to the rest of the scene, and the skin textures, I think, just don't look natural to me.
Right. It's an on-camera. It looks like it's an on-camera flash. So.
Yeah.
And this is I was just there. I was literally there for WPPI. So, this is a tough subject, a tough area to photograph in.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna be honest. I don't think this is image comp ready. I don't think it's good for image comp. There's just too many things going on. The pose is very, very rigid. The lighting, there's no direction of light, so it's on camera, or if it's slightly to camera left. But no, it's actually on camera because you rotated the camera. It's very stark lighting. So in this situation, I don't know what we could do with this image to get it there. I think, you got to remember, competition merits are different than what your clients are going to like. And I think your clients can absolutely love this. It's a cute shot. They're happy. It's their wedding day. This is all good. To try to get a shot in this arena is so difficult. I would have probably had them far to the right up against the Bellagio, against the building, and I would have shot horizontal to capture the waterfall or the water fountain and the rest of the building. And you have to wait. People are going to move, and then I would have had camera off center or something, or just shot natural light. It's okay if they don't have light in their face. So, and then that key line. It's never a good idea to use a bright, hot key line like that, a bright orange. It really doesn't, it's not going to add to your image at all. All right, so we have 2 more. So we're moving right along. This is workshop category. So
this looks like some of your characters from F64 Live last August.
It is some of the same characters. Yeah, we did this IEPPV. So that you know, and for anybody who may not know, that the workshop category means that they photographed these images at an event that was put on and has instruction, and everything was made available from IEPPV or from some instruction. So they're not eligible for normal competition for category winners, but the workshop category is there so that you can still enter them, you get critiques, and it's within the workshop category. So I will start on this one since you started in the last two. I'll give you a little bit of a breather. For me, this is it's more of a portrait, right? And then within that portrait, they're very grungy and they're very edgy. And I don't know that the straight up color is best for this particular style. I think that it would be good if you had something in here with like a more of a grungy look,
or an environmental background, right? Some sort of like warehouse or climactic scene in an action movie, deserted warehouse kind of thing, or
and where we are, there is a lot of amazing backgrounds out there. Yeah. So, I mean, to start with, let's get it into, an edit.
There we go.
That has much more bite to it.
Yeah.
And then they should have been posed in a place where you had a better background. That's just something we always want to do for this image. I love it. I think that it's very possible that it would merit. Stephen, while you go ahead and you make your comment, I want to put a radio.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, there's a bright white line along the guy in the back's vest that kind of separates the background from his vest. That my eye keeps going to that, and it distracts me. So
I think that's the key line. I think that's
is it?
Yeah,
no, it's it's below that. There's a white area that kind of
like the small of his back.
Yeah, the small of his back, and I might just crop in from that so it doesn't show as much because my eye went to that right away. I like that better, what you're doing there, Troy. The vignetting there, I think, in texture adds something to the photograph. I think the pose is great, the couple is great, their costume and everything. The look they have is really, really cool. I just think it needs a really cool kind of environmental, rough and tough background, and it would do really well.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, like if you did this in, you couldn't enter it in portrait. I guess you could maybe do it in portrait, but you could add some clouds, give it a little bit more texture in the background, because that white sky is just going to draw them out. But okay. So our next one is in workshop, and it is Vinny, Vidi, Vicky. See?
Oh, it's Vici. It's Latin.
See, it's like now there's one of those titles that if the judges don't know what it is and they don't know what it means, you probably shouldn't be using it.
Yeah, that's from Julius Caesar. I came, I saw, I conquered.
Well, then you'd say that.
Yeah.
That would be a great title. That would be great.
Yeah, it would.
So first off, I love what you did here. I think that the edit is a little bit too buttery for the subject, but I like the contrast. And then just keep in mind where you dodged and burned, you've got to get in between her feet as well. There's detail in that area. And let's see, right? I always got to turn on my mask. There it is. Like right in this area right here, right? And then all these highlights, try to put detail in those. Stephen, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And make sure that there's no dust spots on the sensor. I can't tell if those things are dust spots or what they are. But for me, it's just the very bright sky in the background is too bright. And then I think the horizon is crooked a little bit as well. So I would straighten those things up. I'm going to have to actually get up, Troy, and plug my computer in to my power here. My MacBook is going to die on me. So.
Oh, okay. Well, we're actually done. I mean, that's good. That is the last image. So if by some chance you happen to disappear while you're doing that.
That's fine. I'm just going to get darker because my light's not on me right now. But,
okay. No, you're fine.
Yeah,
you're fine. Yeah. I'm going to stop the screen share. So I'm going to pop back to back to you and me. Let's see. There we go.
You can see my orange tungsten lights now in my kitchen.
I can see So, all right, guys. Well, that is the end of our image review for the first 2019 image critique with our guest, Stephen Scharf. Thank you, Stephen, for being here. I appreciate that so much. Everybody, if there's any more that you want to see, make sure to check back. We'll have an email that'll go out to show you what you can check out the recording. I'm actually reading as I'm talking. I'm like, I probably should do that. Yeah. This will be recorded in about a week or so. I'll push it out to put on the YouTube channel, and you guys get an email so you can go find it, and that will be for you to just peruse at your will. So that's going to wrap it up. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now. So thank you guys for being here. Have a good one.